The peaceful way, you can't do anything with it. So when you've been frustrated for 200 years, it seems the thing to do is to pick up the gun.
Take them out, Wizard. We had enough of this shit, boys. Hey, hey!
Now what they've done is gradually moved from a position of reconciliation and negotiation and compromise, if necessary, to one of the use of outright terrorism as tactics to achieve political ends.
Move out. I'm not fucking leaving here. You're not leaving? Why not? Please, move out. Fucking stop. Okay, go ahead. We're not gonna kill you at all.
We don't want to die. We want to live. We don't want our nation to die. We want our nation to live.
The warriors. Who are they? Why are they? Questions from a summer of Mohawk defiance. The people behind the masks have aroused the passions and curiosity of Canadians from coast to coast. It's difficult to pin down just who makes up the Warriors Society. The membership list is treated like a military secret. The leaders and organization change depending on the circumstances. Why the Warriors exist is easier to answer. Consider Mohawk history.
The ancient longhouse where our families lived, where our leaders met in council, where our people...
This film by Mohawks reflects their pride in centuries-old traditions and institutions. And it expresses the view that they have never surrendered their land or their status as a nation.
Our promise to the Creator to honor and protect our Mother Earth still stands, and if necessary, we will defend that promise with our lives.
Mohawks are part of a once powerful alliance of Indian nations called the Iroquois Confederacy. Today, Mohawks are concentrated in Kahnawake, south of Montreal, Kanesatake, near the town of Oka, and Akwesasne, straddling the Canada-U.S. border near Cornwall, Ontario. In modern times, Mohawks have resisted intrusions by the dominant non-native society. They refuse to accept the Canadian government's new political system imposed on all Indians, giving rise to confrontations like this. In 1959, police were called in to break up an angry protest against the forced removal of traditional leaders. It's a scene that's seared into the Iroquois memory.
It was seen as a gross violation because the Iroquois system, though different from ours, was seen by them as being equally, if not more, democratic.
Ronald Wright is a researcher and writer of Native history.
And it would be the same sort of thing as if the United States came up here and imposed their way of doing things on us. Only it would be a much greater violation than that because the cultural traditions were far more different than ours are from the United States. But I mean, look how upset Canadians get at the Americanization of Canada. And that'll give you some idea as to how violated these people felt when the Canadians imposed a sort of system that was dreamed up by some bureaucrats and thought was good for all Indians.
The civil rights movement of the 60s further stoked the fires of nationalism. In December 1968, Mohawks claiming sovereignty blocked the Seaway International Bridge near Cornwall.
This is Indian land, and these people here are trespassers. We know that, they know that, and they have no right to come here and to throw the Indians off their own land.
There's going to be bloodshed in this country because they don't follow the laws. Are we going to give up? No. 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 Or are we going to fight until there's not one Indian left here? Yes.
They were angry over the disruptions and land expropriation caused by the Seaway development. They were angry over the pollution caused by the smelters and refineries along the St. Lawrence. And they were frustrated by the futility of pressing their case through peaceful negotiation. The seeds of the Warriors movement were sown.
You had a new generation growing up of young men who had seen their parents try to use the legal system to stop this expropriation and fail. They had seen enormously powerful interests arrayed against them, and then they had seen the white man ruin the land on which they lived. And at that point, they'd had enough, and so they began to think about other ways.
This incident in 1973 profoundly affected all North American Indians. The National Guard and police against armed Indians in a tense standoff at Wounded Knee in South Dakota. Indians were serving notice that passive resistance would not be the way of the future.
I was kind of appalled that none of us knew really the significance of what was happening in Wounded Knee at that time.
The incident was an awakening for Art Montour, a Mohawk from the Kahnawake Reserve.
And so it was from that point that I really tried to understand what was happening in Wounded Knee in relationship to ourselves as Mohawks.
The year of Wounded Knee also marked the birth of the Warriors Society. Mohawk militants, some of whom had taken part in the earlier nonviolent demonstrations, now took up weapons and called themselves the Warriors. For the next 17 years, they were involved in a series of armed conflicts. The 1973 eviction of hundreds of non-native residents in Kahnawake was the first act directly attributed to the recently formed Warriors Society. It turned into a bloody clash between Warriors and Quebec police. 3 men who took part in that incident remained key influences on the Warriors Society to the present day. First, Louis Hull, the Warriors' philosopher king, artist and author of the Warriors Manifesto. His paintings and writing reflect a doctrine that summons the ancient fighting spirit and calls on Mohawks to assert their sovereignty through armed aggression. It's a seductive gospel for militants. Might is right.
Only the strong have peace. You can't have peace without having power, see? That's the idea of guns anyway, is to be so strong that you can have peace.
Second, Paul de la Ronde, one-time war chief or commander in the Warriors Society. He remains a prominent player, and during the summer was involved in the blockade of Montreal's Mercier Bridge. And third, Art Montour, who goes by his Mohawk name, Gaguila. He's currently serving a 10-month prison term in the United States for blocking a police raid of a casino on a Mohawk reserve.
I was a warrior when I was born. I'll be a warrior when I die. That is the tradition of our people. And as long as I believe in the sovereignty of Mohawk people, then I have no alternative. That is my duty and obligation.
A lot of people are asking, who are the warriors of today? How many are there? What's the age range? Can you give us a description of the warriors of today?
If you really looked at the warriors beyond the title warriors and beyond what's in the media about how they're not very nice people, etc., you'll see that they're iron workers. You see that they work in plants. You see that they work in grocery stores. You see that some of them, pump gas. They're in different kind of everyday businesses, and then when there's a need for their presence, then they come to the assistance of their people.
Montour played a leading role in an armed occupation in 1974. Warriors took over an abandoned camp in New York State's Adirondack Mountains. It was ancestral land, said the Warriors, and they were reclaiming it. Montour eventually struck a deal with Mario Cuomo, then a state official. The siege would end in exchange for another parcel of land near Plattsburgh, New York. Today, a bingo hall and a cluster of homes constitute what is called Kanien'kehá:ka. Not much to see, but the Warriors say it is their stronghold. They won it, and they'll defend it. Last spring, a helicopter flying over was shot at. One passenger was wounded, and the chopper had to land on the Warrior territory. The Warriors said they didn't fire the shots, but they do in principle lay claim to sovereignty of their airspace. Ask the Warriors what they believe in, and they will tell you Mohawk sovereignty. And on that point, they have the support of the entire community. Where Mohawks disagree is on the subject of guns and gambling. The coming of the bingo halls and casinos left the Mohawk community bitterly divided. The Warriors, intimately involved in the running of the casinos, were also their main beneficiaries. The money made here paid for the guns. The warriors argue it's a means, not an end.
Although those may at times be very controversial, they are the first steps towards, letting ourselves be free of government handouts, government grants, and so forth.
The last 4 years, we've seen a rise in certain activities here that can only be defined, according to our law, as criminal.
Doug George, a Mohawk from Akwesasne, is also an advocate of Mohawk sovereignty, but he is anti-gambling, anti-warriors.
When you adopt that as a tactic, as they have, the ends justify the means. You're corrupted by those means, absolutely. And in the pursuit of power, the single-minded pursuit of power and wealth, these people have permeated our community, have saturated our community with a sense of fear and dread.
They're about in the middle of the bridge now.
The split between the warriors and their opponents erupted last spring on the Akwesasne Reserve. It was civil war. 2 Mohawks were killed.
There has not been armed aggression against Indian people by the Warrior Society. That has been a very good disinformation campaign by people that call themselves the anti-gamblers. I call them anti-sovereignty people.
Critics would say to you that the warriors don't care about sovereignty, that they don't care about the traditional ways. What they care about is guns, gambling, smuggling, period.
Well, first of all, it's not true, because the Warrior Society, the people that belong to it or join up with it is because of sovereignty. And I'm a warrior. I've been a warrior for 17 years. I'm also a structural iron worker. And I am not going to put my life on the line, or my wife's life, or my children's life on the line for a gambling establishment.
Akwesasne today, still tense and under heavy police guard. A reassuring presence for some, including Doug George, even though he has been charged with the murder of a warrior supporter during last spring's shootout. His hostility towards the warriors has not diminished.
I have to live with the end results, the cold, practical reality of the Warrior Society. And that here has been Akwesasne, has been one of terror, one of violence, one of fear, and ultimately one of death. And that's to us what the Warrior Society is, and nothing less. We have to, after all, see them for what they are.
These latest dramatic images underscore the fact that the warriors have much to answer for. The violent behavior of some members, their questionable businesses. But the standoff of the past summer at Kanesatake has redeemed them in the eyes of many Mohawks.
In attaching themselves to a very legitimate cause which Native people and many non-Native people across the country acknowledge as just, the warriors justified themselves.
For Mohawks like Marlene Brent Castellano, who teaches Native Studies at Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario, that support is conditional.
If Lasagna or any other person goes back to his community or my community and starts acting as an enforcer for speakeasies that corrupt the morals of my children and nephews, I'm going to fight him. I'm going to oppose him.
Now, you know why we changed the 2 directions? You know why we go in 2 directions? Because there are 2 ways to go, all right? There are 2 paths to follow all the time. There's a good way and there's a bad way. And you have to
the children of Akwesasne learn the lessons of Mohawk tradition.
And it's up to you to follow that right way, okay?
These youngsters will have to sort through the conflicting visions of the past and the future. And as the issue of Mohawk sovereignty comes round to confront them, they will be looking to renounce or embrace the way of the warrior. For the Journal, I'm Nancy Wilson.
And that's our show for tonight. Later this week, we will have a special full edition on this weekend's Summit at the United Nations on the Rights of Children. I'm Barbara Frum. Good night.